back to the Irish Mags Show. It's episode 45. Brought to you by the Irish Mags NUFC supporters group. Just about still intact after a wild weekend, both on home soil and overseas, which we'll be coming to very shortly. I'm Paul, I'm your host for today, and of course I'm joined by the big man himself, Mr. Alan Williamson. Alan, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, recovering after that hectic weekend, shall we say. It was some weekend.
I tell you what, so folks, we mentioned it on last week's pod that myself and Alan were going to be meeting in Newcastle for the first time. We've met in several places, but not actually over there. And what a weekend we had. My voice is still a bit croaky. Alan is still a bit emotional. But we had an absolutely fantastic time, which we are going to come to because the majority of this podcast, we're going to talk about not only that performance against the league leaders and the league champions, Manchester City, but also the 2 days for some of us that we had in Newcastle, as well as not one, not two, but three meetups that happened here at home across Dublin and Cork and, of course, Belfast. Keen to hear all about those as well. Alan, I believe you had spies planted in all these locations.
I just might have. I had to make sure the lads were on their best behaviour, and of course they weren't. You know yourself.
Naturally enough, no. Yeah. I mean, we'd be one to talk now after our behaviour over in the two. And I also heard that one of those spies didn't show up to do his job, but we won't talk about him, will we?
Par for the course, unfortunately.
Par for the course. What a letdown. He's going to get demoted now very shortly from his roles and responsibilities in the Irish Mags. We're also going to have a little chat about the Carabao Cup. It's Carabao Cup. Of course it's Carabao Cup. With the upcoming clash against Wimbledon that has been refixed for a home. We needed a natural disaster to get a home cup to draw in it.
We finally got it. We finally got it.
Our luck. So we'll have a little preview of that. Going to talk a little bit about how we feel Eddie Howe and the team are going to be prioritising cups against league, because the league's going fairly well still, all things considered. And of course, we're going to talk about some upcoming meetups in the Irish Mags community as well. Alan, where to start with the weekend that passed? The less talking I do, the better, because I will literally run out of steam here. But seeing as you're only here, we haven't mentioned Crisho, of course. Crisho is still AWOL, as you may notice, folks. He's still on some lovely sunny holiday somewhere, sipping on sangrias and
just keeps sending me pictures of beaches, the bastard.
Which you can imagine are all taken from under an umbrella, because that man wouldn't do well in the sun. No, he's just sitting there sipping under the umbrellas. We know well. So we expect Crisho to be back next week. But again, that remains to be seen. We do have spies in Dublin Airport that can let us know if he actually arrives through and makes it back. But back on to Man City. We'll start with the meetups, Alan, because I saw a few pictures coming in with three meetups around the country, around both the south of Ireland and the north of Ireland. The usual story in the Bleaker, although, it must have been strange because, you weren't there, and Sean wasn't there, and Tev wasn't there, and Crisho wasn't there. So the lads in the Bleaker had the opportunity to run absolute riot with nobody to tell them not to, right?
So the Bleaker, as usual, was looked after by Brian, good man Brian. Just as a second, Brian. Sean, I'm going to tell your ma, fair play to you, you're useless. No, Sean texted us an hour before he was meant to be there saying, I'm still in bed, and we were like, absolutely useless. But come here, it is what it is.
Kids these days, Alan.
Disgrace. No, the Bleaker, it looked like it had a great time. Did about 15 lads there, obviously with such a gang of us over at the game. It was a big hit to the Bleaker's attendance, but come here, it was still a well-attended event, and they seemed like they had a great night and great morning and great. I believe a couple of lads stayed until 8 or 9 o'clock. That was a late game or a late night. Yeah. So fair play to them. Then moving on to Cork, we had, of course, the wonderful Paul Slaughter looking after Quinlan's in Blackpool and Cork. And they had a few mini mags, did a few, I won't say big mags, but bigger mini mags, shall we say, because they're all a big gang of kids down there. But yeah, they seemed to have another great time. And of course, we had the inaugural Belfast meetup in Lavery's, which was very, very well attended, and a special tip of the hat to Thomas for organising that, looking after that. He's come on board to give me a bit of a hand with organising all the meetups and all this jazz. But first one in the books, and it was very well attended, went down well. Come here, the result certainly helped, but three meetups across the country, all well attended, all went brilliantly. That's all we ever want. The more mags, the better.
The more indeed, and the more locations, the better, because we're going to be having another location in terms of meetups coming up very shortly. But more on that later. We have to keep you listening, folks. We have to keep the suspense. But yeah, always great to see, and especially a big shout out to everyone who's helped organise the meetups and the respective pubs and landlords who allow them to happen. We couldn't do it without you, folks. We love you. Well done. Sticking with that long day, Alan, you mentioned the guys in the meetups. Some of the guys at the meetups had a long day. Some of us had a very long day indeed, and even a long weekend. I myself, as we said, went over on the Friday, which I suppose in hindsight just gave me an extra night drinking, and I'm paying for it as we speak. I didn't have it in me to be getting the bus at 1 o'clock in the morning for that 5:45 a.m. flight because I'd be travelling from Galway. So bit the bullet and went on the Friday. We had a few starter warm up pints on the Friday night, just while we were waiting for all the bigger lunatics to arrive on Saturday morning. So I met up with a few of the Irish mags and people who know Dave Bullman and his lovely other half Yvonne. And also the famous Daniel Sanderson, who I'd never met before, and we'll never forget after that weekend. No. And we were wondering what to do, and we bit the bullet and we said, let's go to the Stack on the Friday evening, because obviously with an early kickoff, we're like, are we going to have time to get into the Stack? Especially you and me, we had some business to attend to on Saturday morning. So we went to the Stack Friday night, and it was rammed, and the crack was unbelievable in there. We got ourselves a lovely little table in between two different bars, so we had the option of choosing. Got some lovely food in there, and yeah, we consumed quite a few pints. Stayed there until closing, until we were literally thrown out and asked to leave. But nice. Because it was closing, it wasn't due to Daniel's behaviour, which could have happened. But we looked. I'm
sure it was Daniel was on the worst of them three. I now, if I'm honest with you.
I can neither confirm nor deny. I prefer not to speak.
Speak, I am in trouble.
Exactly. We took a wander in then to town, and we said we'd swing by Filthy's just to plant the seed for the following day. And we had a great laugh, and just the four of us kept it nice and honest. And I like to think I had a kind of a nice calm night. I was home at 1:30, but when I look back at it, I was like, God, I actually drank more than I'd usually drink.
Well, now hang on. Here. I was getting photos off you on Friday night, so I can guarantee you it wasn't a quiet night.
Well, again, I prefer not to speak. If I speak, I'm in big trouble. But yeah, then obviously we had Saturday morning's events to kick off then. And we're going to come to the match very shortly. But I think that the main topic of this podcast, or as you'll see in the title, folks, we had a big Irish Mags event in the morning before the game. So a big shout out to Matt, who's the supporter liaison for Newcastle United. And of course, Tev, who's on the blower to him probably every day, if not 2 days. But as we mentioned on last week's pod, we had our young player of the season and young player of the season awards from last year, where all of you listeners and all of our Irish Mags voted for two players. Anthony Gordon, who was winner of the player of the season, and Tino Livramento, who was the young player of the season. And not only, Alan, did we go and get some lovely trophies made up, not only did we go and get some dedicated specialised flags made up, we were lucky enough to blag our way into the stadium the morning of the game, nice and early, as all the players were walking in. And you normally see the Newcastle snaps that get taken. We were hanging out just behind that, having a look at what was going on. And we were lucky enough to meet both Anthony Gordon and Tino Livramento. You'll be seeing the photos coming up on screen now, folks. But Alan, I suppose you want to just talk through, what was our experience like, kind of hanging out in the stadium, just as the players were rocking in, looking at some of the familiar faces that were around, players, staff, and of course like media and ex-players, and then naturally getting to meet the two lads who were really nice, really sound to us, and it was a great experience.
It was absolutely surreal. It was something I've always said I'd love to be one of them people that gets to do something like that, and all of Tev's hard work finally paid off. It was meant to happen at the Celtic Cup, but obviously didn't, and happened this weekend, and all I can say is absolutely unbelievable. From minute one to the very end, the club looked after us so well. Anything we asked for, anything we wanted, they looked after us. They did it for us. Matt was outstanding, to be fair to him. The lads were unbelievable. Quick chats with both of them. Just genuinely, what can you say? It was absolutely outstanding from minute one to the end. What else can you say?
Yeah, we were all buzzing. We were like kids again, I mean, it's cool meeting, the players, obviously, right? And it's only when you're really in person you kind of see like these are the nature of like these athletes, and even the size of the two lads. We got some mockery on the photos because the lads are clearly much taller than all of us. Even Graham, who's the tallest of all of us that were there. But yeah, they're like, not only that, but they were both obviously pure sound. Like Anthony in particular was in
Gentlemen.
great form that morning. Do you know what? Once I kind of got a feeling for Anthony's mood, I was like, oh, lads,
He's in
we
the
could be
mood.
on for something here today. He was in good form.
Yeah.
And, shook all of our hands, had a quick chat with us. Tev gave him a little spiel about the Irish Mags. We gave him a bit of grief about starting for England against Ireland there a few
Yeah.
weeks ago when they beat us 2-0. Had to be done.
Yeah.
And similarly for Tino as well, they both are very appreciative of the award. So big shout out to all the Irish Mags who voted for them, and for Anthony Gordon and for Tino as well. And of course, our host there, Matt, in the stadium.
And
really, really cool. And the
just
last
one
piece
thing.
I was going to say, you're probably
Yeah.
going to say the same thing.
I am.
Go for
Tino
it.
Livramento. What a man. So we're walking out of the stadium, myself, Tev, Fergus, and
This is after the game, right?
after the game, yeah, sorry, we're leaving the stadium. Phone starts ringing. Newcastle ringing us. We're like, oh, we're in trouble. What did we do? What did we do? What did we do?
Who stole something when we were walking through?
That's
the
exactly
dressing
what I
room?
was thinking. I was like, oh, one of us
I thought I got away with it.
very silly. It was Matt from the club. He's like, can you just get around to the Bobby Robson statue and I'll meet you in 2 minutes? And we were like, oh yeah, whatever. Yeah, we'll be around now. So walked around. Matt walks out with a little Newcastle bag in his hand, and we're like, oh, maybe someone forgot something or whatever. And we're like, oh, cool. And he's like, Tino just walked up to me, handed me this and said, get that to the lads. And we were handed Tino Livramento's match-worn, signed jersey dedicated to the Irish Mags. And it was just one of them moments where, what can you say to that? A professional footballer thanked us for giving him a lovely €10,000 award by giving him a match-worn jersey. And it was just, as I said on Twix or whatever you want to call it, it was the cherry on the icing on the cake, and it was just amazing. Cannot thank them enough.
Cool. Fair play to him, yeah, because I know, like, I think Matt had said he just said the Irish Mag's still around, and Matt probably knew well we'd still be around, and he'd know where to find us too.
Yeah.
But it's like, obviously it's really cool to get it. I don't know. I mean, is it going to be hanging in your bedroom, Alan, or are we going to try and get it in a shared location? But
so what I have said is, people did question going, how did you manage? Because I put the picture up. It does not belong to anybody. I tried to make this clear in the WhatsApp group. It belongs to the Irish Mags and everybody. It will be going up on the wall in the Bleaker, because that's our HQ at the moment. Forever and ever and ever and all that jazz. So it's going to go on the wall in HQ, and we're going to hopefully add to it over the years, but it's the first of many. So anything else you want to send our way, we'll take it and put it on the wall.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah.
And like you said, the icing on top of the cherry, on top of the cake, on top of the pints, that was that day. And of course that game. We'll come to a little bit more in a moment. I suppose, we'll start off really quickly. We had a big number of Irish Mags actually travelling over.
Yeah.
There was a couple of flights on the Saturday morning as well. I saw the photos start to kind of pour in of people making their way over. You lads had a very early start to the day.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is, rather than go through all the photos here, we will actually be uploading a dedicated kind of an album. There's an album up there for Irish Mags on Tour. We'll be putting them all up on the website, which is theirishmags.com. But again, a couple of shout outs to some of the junior mags that travelled over. Some of them even met Nick Pope, I think, at the airport after the game. I'm not sure where he was going, but maybe he was just taking a flight to London because he didn't want to drive down for the Wimbledon game. I don't know.
Don't blame him.
You couldn't blame him for that. Or maybe he's got a week off and he may not be playing against Wimbledon, Eyes emoji. And yeah, loads of other pictures doing the rounds. Some of the lads down by the pitch side, obviously the lads in the stadium. And a lot of pub photos that we'll come to as well shortly, because we're going to go into some detail, Alan, just a little bit of detail, on the events that transpired after the game finished. Before we get there, let's actually talk about the game itself, though. I suppose the first thing, and we all remember this because you and me and Graham and Tev were trying to get a pint in very quickly before the game kicked off over in Rosie's at about 11:30. And for some reason, it is a black hole for coverage. So we were struggling to even get the team sheet up when it was announced. Yes. But just to quickly look at that team sheet, I guess, when I took a look at it, it was probably the best I'd felt about a team sheet, maybe all season or definitely in quite a while. Now, probably 65% of that is because Sandro Tonali was starting, and you know how I feel about Sandro Tonali.
Yes.
But I think, the inclusion of Lewis Hall was kind of a big one. Obviously, we would have liked to see Alex Isak up top there, and the second he was out, once we got wind of the broken toe situation, you kind of wouldn't expect to see it any differently, right? No surprise that Jacob Murphy was on the right. What was your reaction to the team sheet, the selection, and how we kind of lined up and started against Man City?
It was exactly what we all called for. The only real 50-50 decision was Kieran Trippier, Tino Livramento, and on the basis of the performance and the result and everything that happened, Eddie Howe, tactical masterclass, got everything right in that team sheet. Outstanding. I had said previous that I thought he could have made changes in the midfield. He stuck to most of his guns and brought Tonali in for his first start, and it worked. Everything from bar Man City actually scoring that goal, they never really created much. And that was down to how well we played tactically. We stifled them more than they played badly. Did a lot of the ball, did very little with it. And that was down to how we set up, how our team lay out. Outstanding. And just Lewis Hall, what a player. He's going to be so good. Just looks like an absolute Rolls Royce. Now, he's still very young, still very naive, but going to be very, very good.
Yeah, like what you touched on there, especially of like how we managed to kind of mitigate Man City having any real chances. Like, as I looked at that first half, so I was in the Leazes. I was kind of like midway up, sort of underneath the away fans, which is always an experience, but plenty of noise. I felt like it was very evenly matched kind of half in terms of, you know, I don't think either team deserved to really be ahead. However, I did think we had the better chances, or at least we were a bit more threatening going forward. I don't think we created any real clear-cut chances, but particularly down that right-hand side, Kieran Trippier was bouncing down there like he was 10 years younger than he is. And between him and Jacob Murphy, they were getting loads because Gvardiol pushes up so high.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of occasions where we had the ball down there and we almost had to slow down play or cut inside because the cross wasn't there, because why? There was no striker in the box, or at least we hadn't got anyone up in the box. So definitely for that first half, I was really impressed with Trippier. I thought it's his best game, I think, since probably before Christmas last year, when he was in really good form, which is really positive to see. Obviously not for Tino Livramento, but you know, as we've always said, you need competition, you need lads to drive each other on, and ultimately we all know Livramento is probably going to be the successor long term to Trippier, and he can only learn from him. So I was really pleased with Trippier, and as you mentioned, Lewis Hall there as well. I would be highly confident to go so far as to say it's his best game in a Newcastle shirt.
Oh yeah,
and
easy.
You know, without a doubt, yeah, definitely. And throughout the game, and I thought he got better and better. And on a similar note, the other player I want to talk about, Alan, before we talk about the goals and the second half, on Sandro Tonali, for the first 10 minutes, I kind of found myself thinking, he hasn't really done much yet. He hasn't really got into the game. You know, Joe Linton was breaking down Man City play like he does, you know, smashing himself, throwing himself around. Bruno was being Bruno, but I felt like Tonali just hadn't really put a stamp on the game till about 15 minutes, and then he kind of just grew into it, and I felt that as the game progressed, he just got better and better and better. He started to get on the ball. He started to make a lot more off the ball runs. You know, he was kind of linking up well down that right hand side as well in the second half, with Trippier, with Murphy and all that before he went off, obviously. But I thought he definitely grew into the game as it progressed, and I thought we actually lost something when he went off. Now Longstaff came on. Hard for him to come on. He got a really good chance. He's so man for getting in the right place at the right time. Obviously, sometimes we get question marks on his finishing, but I felt like we lost a bit with Tonali going off. And for me, the positive to take from that is it's very hard now to say that spot is not Sandro Tonali's.
Oh, no.
In terms of it's his to lose. He has to be our starting midfielder on that right hand side of the three.
You kind of made a few funny faces when I said that Sandro Tonali would be our pinnacle midfielder.
I always make funny faces when you speak, Alan.
One start, and I think I've been proven right. The man is going to be so valuable to us. There's not one pass that he made that didn't have. It wasn't just I'll get rid of the ball and someone else will do something here. He was playing the pass that was going to create the danger. Everything didn't always go forward, but it was always had a reason to it. He is 2 yards quicker than everyone else in that midfield. Not pace-wise, I mean just thinking. He's 2 yards quicker, thinking on the ball. He is world-class. Yeah. That's the only way you can describe Sandro Tonali. World-class. Like that Man City midfield of Kovacic, I know Lewis was in there, he was left back, but it wasn't a bad midfield. I know they were missing De Bruyne and Rodri. It wasn't a bad midfield they still put out. And he was the best player in that midfield. It's the easiest way to explain him. He was amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I know there's a caveat about them missing Rodri, and they don't do well when they miss Rodri. But yeah, they were missing Rodri and De Bruyne they still managed to have Phil Foden on the bench, just casually leaving the player of the season from last season
Yeah.
on the bench, like the Premier League player of the season at that. And also, like you said, Kovacic is a top class midfielder. Gundogan, we've seen what he's done over the last few years. Maybe they're not the youngest, but on paper they're as good, if not better, as midfielders we have. As you said, Bartonelli and maybe Bruno. They'd probably like to have them both, I'd say, at this stage, which is a good thing for Newcastle, of course. Okay. We concede that goal. I think they were a little bit fortunate. That goal happened kind of down in front of where I was. Trippier goes to make a tackle. Could he have been a bit stronger in it? Possibly. Is he trying to avoid fouling Jack Grealish? Possibly. The ball kind of ricochets, hits off Jack Grealish's knee or shin, and just kind of gets killed by the ricochet, and it kind of just falls into space for him to run onto. He gets the ball obviously then into Gvardiol, and it's a really well taken finish for a left-sided. He's a left back or a left-sided centre back on his right, I think it was. They're 1-0 up on us at half time. I sat there thinking, they're lucky to be 1-0 up on us. And and like, you're playing a team like Man City, that's not the worst situation to be in at half time.
No,
that you're they're lucky to be ahead, and they were.
To be disappointed to be 1-0 down against Manchester City at half time with how poorly we have played this season. That was a good way to be feeling going into half time, I thought. And I was like, we're well in this game. And we proved right. Just on the finish by Gvardiol for a centre half. He finished that like Isak would. That was an amazing finish. Like, Pope could do nothing about that. He took a touch, opened his body, rolled it into the bottom corner. They're not stopping that. It's a cracking finish. So
striker's finish,
Yeah.
I actually was quite impressed with Gvardiol, just seeing him in the flesh. You see a lot more when you're at a game versus on TV. I've said that before. He's definitely a world class.
Yeah, he's very, very good defender.
He's very good. As are a lot of those Man City players, sadly. Similarly with like somebody like Bernardo Silva. You were mentioning Lewis Hall. Like, for me, Bernardo Silva is one of the best midfielders in the Premier League for the last 10 years. In terms of his technical ability, his intelligence, and for a player like Lewis Hall to kind of manage him for the whole game. Yeah. I'm not saying he didn't get beaten on one or two occasions, or he didn't. He had to work hard to do it, but that experience for Lewis Hall's development will be unbelievable. Just
absolutely
the confidence boost. To go and he basically played. Did he play 90 minutes? I think he played 90 minutes. Fairly sure he did.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And to come away with that's going to be huge for his confidence and his development as well. Okay, Alan, I have another one for you. This is the way I've been processing information since. Manchester City had John Stones on the bench. John Stones is arguably England's first choice centre back.
No, he's not.
And isn't going anywhere for the moment in terms of who's picking the teams.
Yes.
Now, on the other end of the pitch, we had Big Dan Burn, who has never played for England, who is unlikely to ever play for England, let's be realistic, who absolutely, and I use that word managed, I don't want to say he marked Haaland out of the game. He didn't pocket him to an extent. Like, Haaland still got on the ball and is really hard to deal with. But what Dan Burn did was he managed him so well. He, the physical battles, he didn't win them all, but he won the most important ones. He was following him around when he was drifting either left or right. He was just glued to me. He was so alert. And this is where I think that being a Geordie, being a local lad, that extra kind of 10% is what helps a player like Dan Burn manage, and I've no qualms in saying this, the best striker in the world, who has 10 goals in 5 games before this game kicked off. And that continues what is, for us, a pretty good record of managing Erling Haaland. He's got 1 goal in like 5 games that he's started or played against us.
There's your point. You've just made it there. Like, he's 10 goals in 5 games before he played us. He's played 5 games against Newcastle and scored 1 goal. We are his kryptonite for some reason. And it's never Botman and Schär that pocket him. It's been Lascelles. It's been Dan Burn. It's madness. For some reason, he hates St. James's Park, and I love it.
Oh, I'm totally here for it.
Yeah.
I do think that was one of Dan Burn's best games that he's played for Newcastle. And you just have to give him some credit. There was a point where we had gone on in the attack. I think Ederson's ended up with the ball, and Dan Burn is up there in the box, in the Man City box, and rather than just sprint back to where he's supposed to be, he kind of decides, well, I'm the furthest man forward. I'll start off the offensive press, and he's closing down Ederson, and he's chasing him down And I'm just like, what's happened? And they eventually gave the ball away. I think
Yeah,
Gordon
they
ended
gave
up
to
with the ball in
Gordon. Yeah,
custody.
gave it straight to
Yeah,
Gordon, and it all came from Dan Burn pressing
Dan
Ederson.
Burn.
You would have
Dan
got
Burn,
serious
yeah.
odds on that being a bet. Dan Burn to press Ederson for an attack.
Alan, you and me, as we've said before, we're big football manager enthusiasts.
Yeah,
There's a role in Football Manager called pressing forward. Are we going for pushing for Dan Burn to be the next
yeah,
pressing forward?
pressing centre half.
Oh my god! I mean, it was great to see, but I think it summed up the return of our intensity. I
Yeah,
think as an Eddie Howe team, where I suppose, it's not like we stopped this intensity or this pressing game, but I just don't think we've timed it very well in
no,
the season so far. In some previous games, where maybe one player has pressed and another one isn't pressing, that kind of thing, and just we'll have to move on to him. I'm saving him for last. Anthony Gordon was like a man possessed. Now, it would be a big statement, Alan, to say this, but I'm going to say it. Obviously, he was clearly motivated and inspired by the award that we presented
yeah. That was
presented
the
him
only
before
reason
the
he
game.
played so well.
Nothing to
Only
do with
reason.
the amazing War Flags tribute and AG10 floating around the ground. Nothing to do with the talks of his new contract, where he's kind of on par now with some of the bigger earners. But that award sitting in his locker must have really spurred him on,
Absolutely.
because that was the Anthony Gordon that finished the season last season. That was the
Yes.
Anthony Gordon that should have been starting on the left for England at that Euros, and that's the Anthony Gordon now we hope is back, because he was phenomenal. I mean, I know it's easy to go, oh yeah, well, he won the penalty and scored the penalty, but he did so much more than that. The running,
Yeah.
the aggression for 90 minutes was just outstanding.
There was a point with about 2-3 minutes to go. He pressured Ederson and it got cramp, and my heart sank. I was like, please no. He's back to his best. Please not now. Jumped straight up, stretched his calf out, was grand. Delighted, obviously, but he didn't stop. Minute 1 to minute 90. The man was running around. Bit like Miggy used to, where you're going, he has not stopped moving the whole game. And it wasn't just running for running's sake. He was making dangerous runs all game, closing down. And as you said, he led the press from, not all the time, but 9 times out of 10, Gordon started the press. And what was nice to see was the other players joined in. There's no point in having one player pressing. We pressed as a unit, and that all came from Gordon starting. He was just brilliant from minute 1 to minute 90. Arguably, very hard to pick a man in a match, but he's definitely up there for it.
Yeah, I actually know. I was thinking about that. It is a really tricky one. He might edge it, obviously, having won the penalty and scored it. But there was times where I was looking him down on the pitch, and again, these are things you don't see on TV cameras. He was giving instructions to Harvey Barnes. He was checking on what Jacob Murphy's doing. Like, he led the line in terms of being the first man closing down, but also led the line like vocally and verbally and as a leader. And again, that's more of what you want to see, because he's still a young fella.
Yeah.
And just hopefully more of the same. Let's not forget he's playing out of position, technically. Yep. He's not a number 9. He's not an out-and-out striker. But it was incredible to see how, like, the pressure he's putting on Ederson, who's the best football playing goalkeeper, like ball with the ball to feet in the last 10, 15 years, if not, more. And he was
Ederson would get a game.
Not letting you have the ball.
Ederson would get a game in midfield in the Championship. That's how good in the ball he is. Like, he's the man backheeled, like, getting pressured by Gordon. He backheeled the ball to Kyle Walker, and you're going, that's stupid. Why are you so good at, like, the ball at your feet? You're an amazing goalkeeper. You shouldn't be able to pull passes out like that. He never really lumped it to get rid of it. It was always a pass from Ederson, and that's just Ederson. He's world class. He is the best footballing goalkeeper in the world. And Gordon had him, I won't say rattled, had him under serious pressure for that whole game. It was brilliant.
Definitely, yeah. But I think the tactic, this wasn't just Gordon,
no,
being a lunatic or just him being aggressive by nature. This is tactical as well, right? I'm sure this is discussed. Ederson is part of their attacking build-up. Everton is part of them getting the ball into the right places, whether that's short passing, long passing. We were just saying, no, we're not doing that today. And against a team like Man City, one of my favorite things to do in the world, Alan, and I'm sure it's the same for you, when you're at a game and a stray pass goes out for a throw-in, and you just go, hey. That I must have done that maybe 6, 7, 8 times throughout that game at least. And again, this is Man City, who were so good in the ball, and we let them have the ball to an extent where we were happy for them to have it. But yeah, as you said, that intensity was back, and I think it feels like a win. Obviously, we've come away with a point, but it's a point against Man City, the best team in the world. We've stopped the best striker in the world scoring. And most importantly, at a team and individual level, the performance was completely raised.
Yeah.
And that was a concern coming into this game.
Yeah.
And it's no longer a concern. We obviously have an away game coming up in the league next weekend against Everton. But you just hope that that's such a good springboard and a good platform of confidence, self-belief, and tactical planning to go, right, well, we can compete with the biggest teams in the league. Let's go beat the smaller ones. And that's what has to happen now.
Has to happen. You can raise your game for teams like City. You have to do it against everyone week in, week out. Otherwise, there's no point in raising your game for the teams like City. Because if you're not going to do it against, I don't want to say the lower teams because that's not right, but that's
technically lower because they're lower down the table. Exactly.
Like, I don't want to be getting Everton fans, the Scouse Mackhams whinging at me, you know yourself.
I love that nickname.
Yeah.
But that's for next weekend to worry about.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, look, unbelievable day, unbelievable performance. The sun was shining in Newcastle as well, which always makes it just gives it that extra edge as well. And the city was absolutely buzzing afterwards, as were the Irish Mags, Alan, because yourself and myself and Tev and a few other notables who we'll get to very shortly. We found ourselves, going for a wander after the game.
Yeah.
And we all congregated eventually. We had swung by one or two bars, but spent most of the afternoon, let's call it, bearing in mind we're still adjusting here to an early kickoff, which we're not used to.
Yeah.
And we landed into the Old George of all places. For anyone that doesn't know the Old George, it's just down there in the big market. And what can I say from there? The intensity was present in the Old George as well.
I can still taste Jägermeister.
Things escalated very quickly. We have to give a few shout outs, I think. We probably have to shout out Cormac and Connor.
Connor,
the two quiet lads from our Northern Irish Mags contingent.
Yeah, two quiet lads till they start putting fireballs in front of us. Two arseholes.
I can confirm that, the weekend that just passed was where I learned what a fireball is. And oh my gosh, I think that's one of the reasons why my throat is in bits, because it literally sets your throat on fire. But yeah, that was consumed quite a lot. Shout out to the girls doing the Jägermeister shots. The two of them in the Old George.
Paid their wages.
We literally put their kids through college, I think. It was just rounds after rounds after rounds. And they were well spread around, in fairness. But we also had my mate James, who's a local from Newcastle, wannabe Irish mag, let's call him that, also in attendance. Then we obviously just, Tev landed up after his, had his shower, changed his clothes. I'm sure he even shaved his head and did the whole lot, before he came out. Man never looked so fresh. No. We had Dave and Yvonne again joining us. I'm trying to think of making sure there's no one else I've forgotten before we talk
Dan Sanderson was there.
The man that appeared out of nowhere, Dan Sanderson.
Yeah, he gave out stink. I'm not coming out. I slagged him once in the group, and 3 minutes later he arrived in the Old George.
He just he apparated into the Old George, just appeared out of nowhere. Which was a nice surprise and a great laugh. But yeah,
one other person who I didn't mention, who I probably should, would be my fiance, who was also there.
Yes, and we also have to shout out Fergus, because he was there as well. Fergus, most of us know from the Mayo contingent.
Just on Fergus, that man, unbelievable. Got about 15 minutes sleep in 4 days. So he finished work at, I think it was about 8 or 9 o'clock, went home, had a shower, had something to eat, drove to Dublin Airport, went to sleep from say 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock, went on the pints. And 2 days later, he went home after not sleeping at all in Newcastle and having a weekend beyond all weekends. He then got back to Dublin and drove from Dublin to Mayo before going to sleep. Amazing. Yeah, I don't know how he done it, but he did it.
I have two things to say about this man. One, obviously, he works in the bar trade, so he's a seasoned campaigner for this kind of stuff. But he also told me he was born in Newcastle, so he's got that mix of Geordie and Irish blood in him, and that's what sets you up for days like that and for sessions like that. So fair play as well. Yeah, it was a hell of a weekend, and of course, we mentioned Emma as well. I would just a very patient woman, Alan. If we're going to go with that. But but between herself, between Emma and Yvonne as well, because unfortunately we couldn't get tickets for either of them. So to be fair to them, they patiently waited while all of us were in the game. But I was having great chats about the game and about Newcastle with the two of them. So they're both as passionate as we are.
Oh, yeah.
In fairness, even though they couldn't make it to the game, because I myself would find it hard to go over and not go to a game. So
I'd be heartbroken.
Always that.
I'd be heartbroken.
But yeah, what a day that transpired. Usual crack. I think we ended up in Filthies, and then there was songs, and some lad was videoed being the ringmaster standing up.
Some lad was videoed outside Filthy,
dark,
standing on a table, wearing a number 8 Sandro Tonali jersey. I wonder who that could be.
Do you know who has one of them? Krisho has one of them. Maybe it was Krisho, because it was very dark in that video. I couldn't make out who it was. So yeah, a big shout out to everyone on the day. Obviously, we're just shouting out most of the gang that we're obviously in the company of, but we got some great photos in of loads of other people who obviously in the Irish Mags group, as well as some of the junior Irish Mags as well, which is always a huge boost. So as I said, check out theirishmags.com, go into the photo gallery there in the menu, and you'll find all those photos uploaded this week, whenever I have the mental capacity to get it done, because I'm still a bit ropey. It is Monday after a heavy weekend, on which my flight was delayed an hour, and I missed my bus to Galway, and I ended up having to get a bus through Dublin and out to Galway again, and I ended up about an hour and a half later in the house than planned. So,
that's not what you want.
All in a weekend's work, Alan.
Just one more thing. I promised Emma, I promised myself, I promised everyone that I would not buy this jersey. Yeah. 9:05 in the club shop. I was the first one in the queue with this jersey. I am useless, but it's absolutely unbelievable. Anyone who sees it, the design is in through the white. It's jersey's top of the range. So you're hemming and hawing about getting it. Just do it. It's absolutely unreal, and you will not forget it. It's one of the nicest kits we've ever released. I don't care what anyone says. I
actually saw quite a few of them go around, and I was like, I was so tempted, because I had said to myself, I'm not going to buy anything this weekend in the club shop. And it's probably a good thing that I spent all my money on whiskey and beer at that weekend, because I literally would have spent my last kind of bit of cash in there. So next time I'll see. But yeah, as I saw, like some of the gear going around, even the gear the players were wearing as they were coming into the stadium, those tracksuits, the retro tracksuits, all of it is
unbelievable.
Class, so. Yeah, this Adidas thing is emptying pockets but filling our hearts, so we're well happy with that. Right, okay. That was we'll park that weekend. We'll just put it into the past tense now. Maybe we'll just have to try and move on to it, even though it's still so soon. And we're going to talk about our next game, because there's no time to wait, Alan.
No.
Barely about 24 hours from now, the moment of recording, we will be in the middle of our fixture, which is against Wimbledon in the Carabao Cup. Wimbledon, as we know, their pitch was flooded last week, so the game was moved to St James's Park. Look, we do expect to win this comfortably, Alan, I guess. You know, I've had a look at the Wimbledon team. Sometimes you recognise the odd player or two. I can't say that about this team.
No.
They're obviously, a good few, a lot lower than us in the English leagues. I suppose the one thing not really a question mark, but what we'd expect to see is a lot of rotation in this side.
Yeah.
So probably what we'll do, just to kick us off, would be what kind of side would you expect? You know, if would you change the goalkeeper? Would you be changing the back four? Would you be making a lot of changes?
Yeah, I'd be making a lot of changes. We should be strong enough to go out and put, I don't want to say a weaker side, but the lads who aren't getting the minutes at the moment should be playing this game. So that in my head, it should be Dubravka in goal. It should be Tino right back. It should be Kelly and probably Byrne centre half, because we haven't really got anyone else. And then I'd play Alex Murphy.
Do you know, I'm thinking the same. However, my line of thought was, I'd love to go full rotation, right? I think, Dan Byrne had a hell of a 90 minutes against the best striker in the world. I'd love to give him a rest, I'd be looking at a kind of like Kraft and Kelly as centre backs.
Yeah.
And then Alex Murphy at left back. And then you probably just throw Tino at right back, because, he could do the game time.
Play the full game,
yeah, exactly. So that would be my backline. Kraft, I think, should start. There's no reason for him not to start. He's on the bench against City and never lets us down. So I think by having Kraft in there, gives you the experience. Having Kelly left-sided centre-back, we've all said it, we think he's a better centre-back anyway.
Yeah.
And we're slightly biased, and I may have shouted, "Come on, Galway," when Alex Murphy walked into the tunnel when we were standing in St James's Park. but I'd love to see him get a start.
I'd love to see him get a start
He's
myself.
still making match day squads. He's still on the, Eddie Howe still definitely, is a fan.
He's a fan, yeah.
And this is the kind of game. If he can't start this game, it'd make you wonder, what game would he start? So
Exactly.
I'd be all for that. Who are you starting in goals, Alan?
Dubravka.
Dubravka.
It's got to be Dubravka, yeah, let's be honest. Dubravka's our number 2.
Fair.
As much as we'd like to say it's Vlachodimos, Odysseus, whatever his name is, it's a PSR signing. He will never wear a Newcastle jersey in a proper match unless it gets to the carrier stages of playing in cup finals kind of job. It's going to be Dubravka.
You've just jinxed it. No, you've just jinxed it.
We still have John Ruddy. It's all right.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Poor old Mark Gillespie. Okay. Then you'd be looking at the midfield, and this is where I found myself not struggling, but I know Eddie Howe loves playing somebody like Joe Linton in this kind of game. Even though, again, Joe Linton he could also do the rest.
Yes.
So you'd probably assume that Longstaff is sure to start. And then after that, I was kind of struggling with, who else plays alongside him. Again, Bruno played 90 minutes. He needs a rest. He did a lot of running in that game. Yeah. Tonali, potentially?
No, I can't see. Tonali came off with cramp. If I was Eddie Howe, I'd turn around to Sandro and be like, look, I know I didn't play you for the first however many games in the Premier League. You're not playing against AFC Wimbledon. You're playing the full 90 against Everton. Don't be whinging. Fair. And he'd have to accept that. Could see a bit of a curveball. You could see Lewis Hall play midfield with Joe Willock.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Longstaff as the third, maybe?
Longstaff as the third, yeah. And then you could, yeah. And then you have your choice up front. Will Asula, Jacob Murphy, Miggy Almiron, although I would not be surprised to see Jacob Murphy not play because of Alexander Isak's injury, and we have really got no options other than maybe putting Joe Linton out on the left. But it's, come here, you never know with Eddie Howe. He could give Garang Kwal a game, but I don't think we're going to go that far in the rotation. I don't think.
You'd be more likely to see Sanusi or somebody like that
into
the squad. But even at that, it might be a stretch. We did see Joe Willock play on the left against Man City when he came on for a while.
Yeah.
So maybe Willock is an option on the left. I'd be amazed if it's not, like if Joe Linton didn't start. I just think Eddie Howe is incredibly likely to play Joe Linton. And I'd be surprised if he didn't play one of Bruno or Joe Linton. I'm sure one of them starts. I just think it's kind of a minimise the risk kind of analysis.
Could give them 45 each and say, flip a coin, who starts, who doesn't, who comes on, who doesn't. So that's another way you could do it, because you do always need some sort of leader on the pitch, and that would be him.
And then I would imagine, Miggy probably on the right, and I think it has to be Osula up front. I think we need to give him that run out, give him a bit of a confidence boost.
Just finally blood him.
Yeah. Get him into the team, into the system. And I do think we'll see him score his first Newcastle United goal on Tuesday night.
And his second. And his third.
He'll break the hat-trick duck.
That's it. He will.
Wimbledon. Oh, that would be something else. Okay, let's go to score prediction. Alan Williamson for Newcastle against Wimbledon.
Well, I've just said that Osula's getting a hat-trick, so I can't exactly say 2-0 now.
Minimum 3-0, yeah.
5-1. Osula's getting a hat-trick, and John Joe O'Toole is scoring for AFC Wimbledon, the 36-year-old Irishman.
I remember John Joe O'Toole. I remember him well. I didn't know he was there. Okay, so I do know a player for Wimbledon. Okay.
You do.
I don't see them scoring. I think we have, if I'm looking at, as we're talking about those options, I feel like we have plenty of depth actually at the back. That's more than good enough to keep them out. So I'll probably go 5-0, just to be a little bit different. And like that, I think we'll see Osula get on the score sheet. And then depending on, subs that come on, I think Harvey Barnes can probably get some minutes.
Yeah.
And definitely scores if he does, because I feel like he'll be just too good for them to stop him. So yeah, a confident win. And I suppose the only last question before we wrap up then on Wimbledon, Alan, like where we are now so far in the league. So what are we, 6 games into the league? We played one cup game with the second one coming up. Do you think anything has changed in terms of, we've started quite well in the league. It's hard to compete on all fronts. I think we're going to give it a try. But, do you think anything is any different now than it would have been at the start of the season in terms of our objectives, our prioritization of league versus cup? Eddie Howe always says it's all about the next game. So technically, if it was all about the next game is Wimbledon. But we do have a big game against Everton at the weekend away from home. And they've just picked up their first 3 points of the season. So, do you think anything changes prioritization-wise, or that rotation-wise? Because we're probably, I don't want to say we're doing better than planned, but potentially, we are, because we're picked up quite a lot of points considering our performances.
Honestly, no. I don't think anything has changed priority-wise. I still think Eddie is going to prioritise the Cup, but I think he will be a little bit more pragmatic when it comes to his team selection, just for this round, because we've no Wilson, we've no Isak. We can't risk Gordon getting injured. We can't. So that's where it'll be a little bit more. We're relying on the league, because at the end of the day, the league is a marathon, not a sprint. Anyone can fluke their way to a cup final. You've seen bad teams in cup finals. Look at that Millwall team that got to a cup final a couple of years ago. That's probably about a decade ago now. If you don't, like there's always mad stories in the cup. You'd rather do very well in the league than lose another cup final, if you know what I mean. But I see us prioritizing every game as it comes. But at the moment, the league is just that little bit more important. But I do see us having enough to get through this round. And then hopefully, when it all runs back again now in it's 2-3 weeks time, the Chelsea game, hopefully we'll have players back, and hopefully we'll be able to go, well, we can give the Wilson a run out. We can give players who haven't played a run out and not have to make so many sweeping changes, if you know what I mean. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and Chelsea are in for, like, they're actually in form as well at the moment, you know. So I think we'd fancy ourselves, to be honest, I think we fancy ourselves against any team at home.
Oh, yeah.
And we've obviously drawn them at home now as well. So that's always a bonus for us, obviously, St. James's Park being the fortress that it is and that it should be. But like you said, if we can have a few extra players back, hopefully nobody's picking up injuries between now and then, Isak being back even as well, like that would make a big difference, because there's some big games still to come up. The ballot opened today for one of the bigger ones as well.
The Arsenal one,
at home as well. So I'd love to get a ticket for that. That's always a good one to get to as well.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So we're all confident on Wimbledon. We're confident on our cup chances. We're feeling confident overall after that performance, I think. And I guess where I am is just such an opportunity now to go and kick on. I feel like there's individuals in the team, who after that City game can really hold their heads high and really take a lot from that game in terms of confidence. As we said, Lewis Hall, Anthony Gordon, Dan Burn, and as we said, even like Tonali, for example. And then, we didn't really get Harvey Barnes into the Man City game at all. So, you'd love to think that he's got a bit of a bounce back about him.
He was doing a job on Kyle Walker, though. To be fair to him, Kyle Walker doesn't exactly sit back. Barnes done a serious job on him. So, although he didn't get involved in the game very well, he did do a serious job on keeping Kyle Walker quiet. So,
absolutely, and you take that any day of the week, because Kyle Walker, again, in terms of the tactical role Kyle Walker fills for Man City going forward.
Just one more thing. How was that not a penalty on when Joe Linton was running through?
Do you know what? There's two. Like, I actually was wondering if two, if not three. There was a share incident, a Joe Linton incident, and the Harvey Barnes incident. Yeah. And
we got the penalty that was probably the least of the four.
Yeah, even Alan Shearer said that today on the Rest is Football podcast. He said that the Joe Linton one in particular was more of a penalty than the Anthony Gordon one, which is...
I do think the Anthony Gordon one's a penalty, though. He put the ball by Ederson. He clipped... there is contact. You're running at that speed, and if you look at Gordon's left foot after he takes a step, it hits the ground, and there's nothing else he can do other than fall over. It's a penalty.
It's a penalty, and now he's very good at winning those penalties, as we all know. But I agree. I think it's penalty. If there's contact and you're through. I was surprised he didn't try and just go bottom right corner for like his bottom right.
Yeah,
toe poke it through or something like that. Because then I think maybe the ball slightly got away from him, and then he shifted his whole body. But well taken penalty against a very good goalkeeper, and all the Man City fans up above his head. So Anthony Gordon doesn't really miss penalties. In my experience,
4 from 4.
More than capable of replacing for Alexander Isak. And that's why we voted him our player of the season from the Irish Mags, didn't we, Alan?
We did.
Okay, before we wrap up, Irish Mags business. Two major things to shout out. One, We distributed some lovely discount cards at the weekend for any of the Irish Mags who were traveling. So if you haven't got yours yet, make sure you get in touch or make sure you've been speaking to us, especially with all these home games coming up as well in the next few weeks. Secondly, we mentioned at the top of the show, Alan, about a new meetup location. And I believe you have the inside scoop. Tell us where it
I
is.
have somewhat of the inside scoop. I am just pulling it up here on my phone as we speak. So,
see, Alan always has to have the air code at the ready because he knows how
yeah,
important this information is.
absolutely
And he knows that people get
dreadful. I am. Well, I spent the first 3 weeks of the Cork meetup tagging the wrong pub. So,
well, you
like,
see, this
and that
makes sense now. It all
wasn't my fault. I had picture proof that I was sent to Paul Slaughter. Is this the right pub? Yes, this is the right pub. And guess what? It wasn't the right pub. So I'm not taking the blame again. So we have a wonderful meetup in. God, where's it gone now? I'm absolutely useless.
the suspense that we're building here, folks, is absolutely wild.
Useless. So the Old Quarter, 3 Little Ellen Street, Limerick, V94H278 is where our first inaugural Limerick meetup will be happening from 4:30, 5 o'clock this coming Saturday for Newcastle versus Everton. And then, of course, as usual, I'll be back in the bleaker in my usual throne, giving out stink, whinging. I'll also have the membership cards if anyone wants them. I always have a few on me. If you're looking for one, you just put your tenner into the GoFundMe and you get a discount card and away you go. So, yeah. Anyone.
I'm also reliably informed that you may also have some stickers on you as well, because I observed this man in Newcastle, folks. Alan Williamson was handing these out in Newcastle like crisps. Everybody got one. He was like Oprah Winfrey going around, and you'll have a sticker, and you'll have a sticker.
It actually worked out really well for me. I don't think I told you this. I was walking out of the stadium, seeing a little young fella with a jacket with stickers all over it, all Newcastle stickers. So I went up, handed him one, and thought nothing of it. The dad taps me on the shoulder and goes, "Well, if you're giving him something," into his back pocket, and out came a little magnet for the fridge that was St. James's Park. GeordieGifts.co.uk. He just handed it to me. He's like, "That's my website." He was like, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's unbelievable." I was like, "I was just giving him," and he's like, "You do something nice for him, I'll do something nice for you." And it's actually on my fridge in the house now already. So unreal.
Love that.
Yeah.
Geordie Gifts. We'll put a link to that in the description of the podcast, which will be down below. And you'll find that link along with the link to all of our socials, to our website, which of course is www.theirishmags.com. You can find everything about this podcast. You can find all our photos, all the details that you need to find, especially about meetups, discount cards, all the important stuff. And I think, Alan, we're nearly just about ready to wrap up episode 45. Any other wild business that we should be bringing up before we forget it? Or can we go to bed because I'm tired?
I think it's bedtime. I think we both deserve an early night after that weekend.
Alan's going to go into bed wearing his new jersey, holding his new fridge magnet, and he'll be the happiest man in all of Ireland. Well, on that note and on that bombshell, we're going to leave it there. As I said, check out all the links in the description below. A huge thank you to everyone for listening, for everyone who travelled, all the meetups, travelling over to the games. More games to come, more meetups to come. And until then, there'll be plenty more podcasts as well. So for now, we'll say ahoy the lads, slán go fóil, and we'll see you all very soon. Cheers, Alan.
Slán a bhaile.